Chapter 3. The Death of El Rey. A few days later, the phone rang in the middle of the night. It was Arturo. His father, Don Enrique, whom they called El Rey, the king, had passed away. He was called El Rey because when he was young, he bet everything, including his farm, on a card game, and won with a royal flush. Isabel had always been close to her father-in-law, and she wanted to go to the funeral, so they decided to take most of their savings and all fly down to Las Florencias, their home village down in Mexico. Graciela thought it was a good idea. The trip might help Carlito see another side of things. Plus, he would be reunited with his father. They landed in the late afternoon at the airport, near the state capital. Arturo was waiting for them. They all burst into tears when they saw each other, and then they took turns embracing. Arturo's sister Pepa and his brother Jesus were there too. They got into El Rey's old red pickup truck and drove past the capital towards the rancho spread throughout the valley. There were more hugs and warm food when they arrived at the house. The farm was much bigger than Carlito remembered it. He had been about 5 years old when he had last visited. He hadn't remembered the horses, the few cattle, the goats of all the colors, the dozens of chickens and the dogs. He just knew that he felt lighter and better than he had in a while. That night after dinner, he and Arturo took a walk by the fence line. "Mijo," said Arturo, "I hear you've been getting into trouble. What's going on with you?" "Papa," said a misty-eyed Carlito, "I just don't know anymore. I go to school and I'm bored. I'm so bored with everything. When I come home, no one's there." "You listen to me," said Arturo as he took a step toward Carlito. His voice rose in anger. "I just lost my father. I don't know yet how to feel about it. What it means. I'm now the head of this family. I'm the oldest. And I want you to know that I'm not going to put up with your behavior. You have a choice. You either do things right or pay the price. Do you understand? Do you?" "Yeah, okay, I know," replied Carlito, but inside he was confused. He loved his father, but he had never been spoken to like this before. Part of him knew his father was right, but another part just wanted to be with his homeboys and on the street. They both stopped and looked up at the sky, with the stars gleaming in the darkness like silver sparklers spread across a vast black velvet blanket. That moment, Arturo reached over and put his arms around Carlito and held him for several seconds. He could feel the relief in his son's body. They walked back to the house together in silence. The next morning they marched in a procession through the tiny village to the white church in the middle of the plaza for the funeral service. Carlito looked around at the houses. Some had doors, some of them had a cloth door that flapped in the gentle breeze, and others had no doors at all. The street was made of hardened soil and was full of holes, some of which had been filled with rainwater. There were stones and rocks everywhere. It seems as if the whole town had turned out for the funeral march. Carlito looked at his father and realized that he was one of the few men around. Most had left for the north, for work in the States. A feeling of sadness hung in the air. Perhaps it was because the town had lost one of its few remaining patriarchs. Or maybe it was because the town had lost so many of its sons and daughters to immigration. When they arrived at the church, a priest and 3 altar boys were waiting for them. The pallbearers took the coffin in, and once it was placed in front of the altar, they opened it. El Rey looked like he was sleeping. His white hair and thin mustache highlighted his honey-colored skin. He was wearing a black suit. After the priest said a few words about Don Enrique and how he was a man of honor and integrity, Arturo rose to deliver the eulogy. Arturo talked about his father's life. He said that he had been a man of action. "He always told me," said Arturo, "that a man is judged by his actions. You can talk all you want, but if it's what you do that counts in the end, it's what you do. It was clear that those words meant a lot to Arturo. His eyes glistened with tears. And then, looking straight at Carlito, Arturo said, "We all know how our father loved to repeat that old Mexican proverb. Tell me who your friends are, and I'll tell you who you are. I'll never forget that as long as I live." With tears rolling down his face, Arturo sat down. The next day, Carlito, his dad, and the rest of the family returned home. Chapter 4. A Secret No More. After they returned home from Las Florencias, everything seemed fine. At least for a few weeks, now that Arturo was home again, a sense of normalcy filled their home. They all tried to eat dinner together at least once a week, and on the weekends. But before long, work and events conspired to drive the family apart. Carlito began to stay out late again, and he and his father had many shouting matches. One time his father almost hit Carlito but stopped himself. One day after school, Carlito was hanging out with M-Dog and Izzy. They walked to the local park and smoked a joint, some marijuana. After a while, they started laughing at something, and then in a serious tone of voice, M-Dog asked Carlito if he would do him a favor. "Anything for you," said Carlito. "You know I got your back." At that moment, M-Dog pulled a gun out from his jacket. It was a semi-automatic. "The Black Beauty needs a home for a while," said M-Dog as he handed the black Beretta to Carlito. The gun was heavy. Carlito quickly shoved it into his backpack. "Take care of it, man," said M-Dog. Carlito just nodded. "When I need it, I'll ask for it, and you better have it ready, okay?" "Definitely, just give me the word," replied Carlito, as he gazed at the 5-pointed star that M-Dog had tattooed between his thumb and forefinger. Carlito was thinking that one day he would have his star too. When he got home, he slid his backpack under the bed right next to his abandoned puppet stage. One afternoon, a few days later, Arturo was home alone, angry and upset about Carlito's continued bad attitude and behavior. He debated what he should do. He knew he needed to do something, but before things got out of control, he decided to go into his room and see what was in there. Since he returned from Mexico, he was puzzled by the fact that Carlito locked the door to his room whenever he came home. It was locked again, so he took a kitchen knife and jimmied it open. When he walked into the room, he was surprised by the mess. Clothes were scattered all over the room, on the floor, on the top of the bed, even on the little desk by the window. Books, papers, pens, sneakers, and CDs were piled up here and there. A person could barely walk through the room without tripping. Carlito had drawn his street tag on the wall, Popo. Arturo thought it was artistic, but he still didn't like Carlito drawing in the gang style. Looking around the room, Arturo noticed Carlito's backpack under the bed. He picked it up, and it was very heavy. He opened it and was shocked to find a gun inside. It was a semi-automatic, the one that M-Dog had given Carlito to hide. Arturo didn't know a lot about guns, but he knew that this was dangerous. He checked to see if it was loaded, but the chamber was empty. He suddenly felt sick to his stomach. This was serious. He sat on the sofa with the gun by his side. He wondered whether or not to call Isabel, and decided that he would wait for Carlito and then confront him by himself. At about 10 o'clock at night, Carlito walked in with a smirk on his face. Arturo had put the gun back in the backpack and placed it under the sofa. He looked at Carlito and realized that Carlito was high on something. "What did you do tonight, mijo?" asked Arturo. "Nothing. I just hung out with the guys," answered Carlito with a slight slur. And with that, he turned on his heels and headed to his room. Arturo jumped up and put his hand on Carlito's shoulder. "You stop right there," he said. Carlito brushed his father's hand away, and then Arturo planted himself right in front of his son and looked at him with his steely dark brown eyes. Carlito stopped. "What?" What do you want, man? Come over here and sit down, said Arturo, pointing to the sofa. Carlito sat down. Two things, Carlito, said Arturo. One, you're high. I can tell you're on weed or something. Carlito shrugged. Two, Arturo said while reaching under the sofa for the backpack. Where did you get this gun? Carlito's jaw dropped open for a moment. He looked as vulnerable as a lost puppy. Listen, said Carlito, breathing in deeply and puffing out his chest. Do you think I'm still a little boy? I'm not. I know you and Mama expected me to be just like Graciela. But guess what, Holmes? I'm not her. All those years you spent worrying all the time about Graciela and her grades and getting into college, remember that? Where do you think I was? I was right here and nobody looked at me. Nobody. What about me? I'm somebody. I'm not a piece of furniture. Mijo, said Arturo, reaching out to his son. Don't mijo me, said Carlito. Stop with all the Mexican crap and all that sayings. Before he could finish, Arturo slapped him across the face. Carlito's eyes filled with tears, but he held them back and gave his father a look that would kill. No, you stop, Arturo said, pointing his finger at Carlito. He continued, You're going to Tio Chuy's. You're leaving tomorrow. You're not coming home high and keeping a gun in your backpack in my house. Do you understand? It's over, Carlito. It's time for a new start. Carlito was rubbing his cheek. It was red from his father's slap. He kept holding back his tears and sat on the sofa in silence.